But from the movie Colors, the whole movie is wrong. You know, it's Bloods against the Crips, but we not having war with Hispanics though. Like in the movie Colors, it don't go like that. True, like it's Hispanics against Hispanics, blacks against blacks. But the movie don't make it look like that.
Oh, okay.
I feel that the movie is dealing with the expense of our lives, because after Colors, it's gonna be more deaths in the streets of LA.
Colors, a story of violence, controversy, and truth in Dennis Hopper's iconic gang movie. Of the many gang movies coming out of Hollywood in the 80s and 90s, few have stirred and inflamed public opinion as much as Colors. A harrowing depiction of gang life, violence, and the city of Los Angeles in the late 80s, Dennis Hopper's work has been described as a ferocious, eccentric, and rather unique piece of filmmaking. The movie is still considered as a cult by today's standards, with plenty of adaptations and clips widely available all over the internet. So, how come people were so scared of reactions to this film that police had to be deployed to the streets of several major cities in the US on the day that Colors premiered? And why were so many theater owners so sure of backlash that they straight up decided not to show the movie? A city in turmoil. To better understand the fears and controversy surrounding Colors, we should take a step back and look at how dangerous Los Angeles was around the time the movie came into existence. Long before Hopper decided to base his production there, the South Californian city had already been embroiled in a war that spared neither gangbangers nor civilians. In the eyes of the average bystander, the streets looked like a tinder box moments away from going up in flames. Statistics confirm the desperate situation Los Angeles found itself in. Despite numerous attempts to quell violence in the region, gang-related murders in the city more than doubled between 1981 and 1989. Victims didn't always fit the stereotypical profile of a criminal either. Right next to gang members proudly wearing their colors, newspapers often reported neighbors, elders, and even kids being either wounded or killed in the crossfire. On top of that, the southern part of California was home to more than 600 different gangs and cliques, each with their own creeds and affiliations. With no other options to deal with the situation, the government resorted to crisis intervention programs, essentially groups of young workers, often former gang members themselves, who were given a task to deal directly with criminals. Leveraging connections and their own experiences, these civil servants were expected to build a network of fragile alliances and ceasefires between the rival cliques. And while on very rare occasions these deals did survive long enough for a funeral or a meeting to take place, the general consensus remained that the program had been a failure from the start. For many, it felt like the city of Los Angeles had left its citizens to fend off for themselves. The shooting starts. Building on that premiere, Hopper set out to create a movie that would fully capture gang life within the city. His goal, as he would later reveal during an interview, was simple: make sure people felt like they had just watched a true story. Colors wasn't to be a documentary, but the director wouldn't budge on the fact that it had to be an honest film. Everything in it had to look like it was true, no dramatic license allowed. The moment shooting for Colors began also marked the beginning of controversies and criticism against its production. After editing the script to ensure it felt more realistic by adding drugs and real gangs to the mix, Hopper decided that most of the shooting had to take place within actual gang-controlled neighborhoods. The crew hired a number of former gang members and officers as consultants and spent weeks scouting locations all across the city. Actual members of both the Crips and Bloods were also hired to cover minor roles for added authenticity. Naturally, neither the director's bold stylistic choices nor his taste in locations sat well with the authorities. After imploring Hopper not to use the gang's real names for fear of reprisal, LA police began to predict violence would erupt on the set at any moment. And in most cases, these predictions weren't too far off from the truth. As the crew moved from Watts to Boyle Heights to San Pedro, gangs followed them closely. While shooting usually went on without too much trouble, members of various cliques would hang behind and routinely start harassing each other as soon as production stopped for the day. Thinking back on the film a couple of years later, Hopper himself remarked how it was usually a matter of hours, if not minutes, between them leaving the scene and reports of a shootout or murder taking place. By the time production had wrapped up and the movie was ready for its premiere, the crew believed at least 10 people had been killed in connection with it. A series of unexpected reactions. But that wasn't the only issue. The closer Hopper's film got to its release date, the worse the situation looked on the PR front. Earlier screenings of Colors showed an edgy, sharp masterpiece, but also exposed the possibilities some gangs might take offense to its contents. There was widespread fear of attacks on theaters showing the movies, and many cities beefed up security with additional police and armed guards. And yet, a good part of the violence that newspapers and police departments had foreseen never really happened. While a couple of gang-related incidents could be found in the papers in the few days following the movie's release, the most important of which was a gang member being killed while waiting in line at the theater. Most of the showings went off without a hitch. On the contrary, a lot of protest and grumblings wasn't from gang members, but from spectators, disappointed that some theaters decided to pull the movie altogether, effectively preventing them from watching it in a twisted turn of events. In the end, Colors accomplished exactly what it set out to achieve. In part thanks to the hysteria and fear surrounding its release, the movie left a lasting impact on both spectators and the gang culture of Southern California, earning its rightful spot as one of the most discussed pictures in Hollywood to date.